at what point in your journey, I guess, did you start bringing in people to help you out?
There's a difference between throwing a body at a problem and understanding what a problem is, creating a process for it, and then training a person on what that process is and how you go about doing it. This was me. I didn't have a good job. I didn't do a good job of onboarding people, setting clear job descriptions, roles and responsibilities and stuff like that. But over time, we start to learn that, like, hey, guess what? These things are actually really important, and different types of people fit in very different types of roles. And so that's been a really, and continues to be, a huge journey on the people portion of business.
Welcome to the Landlife Podcast with your host, PJ Riley.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Landlife Podcast. My name is PJ Riley. Guys, if you're getting value from this podcast, make sure you leave a like, subscribe. Actually, stop what you're doing right now and hit like. If you're on YouTube, hit like, leave a little comment. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, do the same. Just a one-line comment, nothing crazy. Just lets me know you're there, and I really appreciate it. Guys, if our guest today, Nathan, if what he says resonates with you and you're like, dude, this guy's, I want to hear more. He's going to leave ways where you can contact him at the end of this podcast. So stick around to the end, catch his information, and then you can contact him directly. Guys, I want to say thank you real quick to Tim Winfrey Jr. and Matt Kavanaugh. They're over at the Freedom Chasers podcast. They are the reason this happened. So those two dudes, they have an amazing podcast, and they introduced me to Nathan Brooks. So Nathan, what's going on, man?
What's up, PJ? Appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, dude, we had a long talk before this about jujitsu, hunting, kids. I think we covered like an entire podcast prior to talking. So
We did.
What part of the country are you in?
I'm in the Kansas City area.
Kansas City area. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So take us back. Let's catch us up to speed to where we're at now. Kind of give us a quick background of who you are and what got you to the point you're at now. Because Nathan's done 700 flips in the past 5 to 6 years. So kind of catch us up to how you got to this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I actually grew up as a nerd musician, singing in the choir, playing instruments, started playing piano and bass, string bass, like the big bass in 5th grade. So you can do the math. I'm in my early 40s. So
Young man.
I have played musical instruments longer than I haven't at this point.
Wow.
In my life. Yeah. So it's pretty crazy. So I went through high school and college doing that as a music major, taught theory, picked up guitar and singing and all that stuff. So I really enjoyed playing and thought that I would make my living as a musician, both in the sacred world, secular world. So for the novice, that means in bars and in churches. And I've done a lot of both, and literally conducted choirs of 100 people and sung in front of 10,000 people in a giant, assembly hall. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, but I kept getting this little push to real estate, and I think 90% of the people from age 15 to 100 right now read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and
I've heard of that book.
Yeah, it's crazy if you've heard of it. And so read that book and found it inspiring and interesting, and so I started doing a handful of deals, and not very well, by the way. Really poorly, like as poorly as you can do. And went through the experience of bankruptcy after doing them poorly in December of 2009. It took me a number of years to get my act back together, and really started doing a handful of joint venture deals through 2012 through 2015. And I met a new business partner. And so we really kind of got off to the races 2015, 2016, and really, that was kind of the span of those 700 plus, flips, the majority of those. And then since, doing a lot of different things, whether it's joint ventures and in development deals or in lending, Airbnb portfolio and stuff. So I've kind of branched out into a number of different things since then.
Right on. Okay, so I think most people are going to want to know, most people who are not in real estate now will want to know how you got started, how you kind of got off, you put down the musical instrument and you walked over and you started doing real estate, right? Like
Yeah.
that's pretty confusing and it's super intimidating, especially, I mean, I can only imagine how many guys that were playing musical instruments ended up flipping 700 homes, right? Probably
Not many.
pretty rare. It's not a common thing. So
No, it's
like,
not a
what
common.
did it start looking like? What were your first few steps into real estate?
Yeah. Well, I literally met a guy in a restaurant, overheard him talking about real estate, and I went and talked to him. And 3 weeks later, I was in business with him. Let me just recommend to everyone, don't do that. So step one, don't do that. Or if you meet them, maybe have a little more dating period than I did. So I've the good and the bad is I've always been the ready, fire, aim guy. So it's gotten me into a lot of interesting experiences and also a lot of trouble. But the first few steps. So honestly, from back then, I was just thinking like, hey, I want to make some money. Real estate sounds like the thing to do it. It seems like it's easy enough. I can figure it out. Right. So, but now I would approach it a little differently, which would be say, what is it you're actually trying to solve? Like what problem in your life and the way you want to experience your life do you want to solve? And then let's back into it, because you might not want to build a giant business and flip 700 houses. You might want to just have a handful and pay them off, or work your W-2 because you love it. And so I really ask people to think about more what's their passion. I just wrote a book, and I'm sure at some point we might talk about it, but in the title, it's No Quitter's Guide to Crushing Real Estate Investing and Living an Extraordinary Life. And I think that is actually the piece where we get to start, where I want people to start, is like, what is living an extraordinary life, or an awesome life, or a great life, or whatever you want to, however you want to say your language. What does that look like? What does that mean? And for us to actually put the time in mentally to think about what we actually want, and then we build it from there.
Okay. All that makes, complete sense. So you get started, you start, work with this other person, right? What were these first deals? Were these single family homes?
Yep. Single family homes,
How are you affording them as a musician? How were you able to afford that?
Back in the day, you could get these loans called the 80/20 loan.
Oh.
And so I got into them literally, in context, my wife was the breadwinner at the time as the school teacher, right? So school teacher made more money than me as the broke musician.
Yeah.
So let's be clear, like, of what the financial situation is looking like. Didn't come from money, none of that sort of things. So, I was just able to like work through the problem, negotiate the deal, figure out, I remember, so here's how good I was. And that's a joke. I didn't pay for an inspection on a number of houses that I bought at one point because I couldn't afford the cost of that.
Wow.
I was buying the house, didn't pay for the inspection.
I'm sure it'll work out.
Yeah. That same house was one of the ones that when I rolled up to the day that I bought it, the Section 8 tenant who was happy to be out of the mold infested, like, crap house, which of course I didn't know because I didn't have an inspection done, was like, peace out, I'm out of here. So what I thought would be the cash flow to cover my payment was now gone.
Wow.
Yeah. So as you can tell, didn't start out real well. Yeah. So, they were, my first intention was to buy houses, maybe flip a couple, flip that money into rentals. And, but I didn't really have a clear plan, clear buy box of what houses I was buying, how I was going to actually, manage those things over time. But, over time, you really learn that those are things that are really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, okay. So you have the ready, fire, aim personality, and I kind of relate to that too. Now that's great initially. You're going to learn a ton of things. You're going to fail and you're going to win. And, it's going to be up and down. And eventually it supposedly kind of plateaus moving up. Right. Now,
that's
a lot of times, what's that?
That's the hope.
That's the idea, right? That's the hope. So a lot of times though, once you start to level out just a tiny bit, you need to start bringing in help, right? You need to bring in like a team of people that know what you don't know, or are just willing to do something that you just don't have the time to do. So at what point in your journey, I guess, did you start bringing in people to help you out?
Well, I tried to do that early on. I just didn't do a very good job. I really kind of sucked at it, if I'm totally honest. So, early on, I think, and even once I kind of restarted my business in 2015, but there's a difference between throwing a body at a problem and understanding what a problem is, creating a process for it, and then training a person on what that process is and how you go about doing it.
Yeah.
And so, it's been a somewhat excruciating at times experience of what that actually means to be a good, everybody wants to be a business owner. And in Michael Gerber's book, E-Myth, he talks about the entrepreneur's seizure. It's like, oh gosh, I want to, I want to be a business owner. Right. And I'm going to be great. I'm going to build this thing. And then, in the book, he talks about, of course I'm paraphrasing, but, like, oh, I hate accounting, which by the way, I do. I'm like, oh, well, PJ, you say you can do it and you're my bro. So like, hey, will you come help me? I don't train you. It doesn't, you don't happen to love accounting. You also love vision and creating, other things. So this was me. I didn't have a good job. I didn't do a good job of onboarding people, setting clear job descriptions, roles and responsibilities and stuff like that. But over time, we start to learn that, like, hey, guess what? These things are actually really important, and different types of people fit in very different types of roles. And so that's been a really, and continues to be a huge journey on the people portion of business.
Yeah. So were you hiring, you said kind of like maybe friends or people you knew, or where were you finding like the team? Was it friends or just guys that were already kind of in the industry with you?
I think it was both, a mixture of both. But, even early on, hiring, when you don't have clear cultural value or core values and a culture aligned with your team, it's very hard to have, like, I remember once showing up, and I was at a mastermind in Denver in Colorado. And I remember reading Jocko's book, Extreme Ownership, and having this realization that I hated the culture in my office and I didn't want to go in there. It's like, I didn't want to even deal with the people that I'd hired. And at the time I owned a property management company, and we're, as well as, flipping all these houses and the clients attached to them. And that was the realization, like, guess who created this? Me. Guess whose fault it is? Me. Guess who gets to solve this problem? Me. And so I walked in there with my tail between my legs a bit and said, like, hey guys, I'm sorry, because if I'm miserable, you're probably miserable. And I created this. And so that was the defining moment for me when I realized, hey, we get to set a culture, and that culture comes from the top. That's the CEO and owner's responsibility. And they set in vision and creating new ideas and relationships and in that long-term vision. And so once I started to have a better handle of that, then we started to do a much better job over time of really being more clear who we were hiring, what we were hiring them for, and then training them for that position.
So what do you think would be a better option now, kind of like looking back? Ready, fire, aim, or ready, aim, fire? Because I think a lot of people, they have failure to launch. They're just afraid to do anything. Yep. Which now, in your position now, looking back, which direction would you have gone?
Well, I think they're both, like, I forget what the thing's called, but you have three pendulum, so the pendulum's swinging, and either side they get caught, right? And so I sold turnkey houses to investors all over the country and all over the world, really. So we would buy it, renovate it, sell it. And so I'd be on the phone, and I knew as soon as it'd be like the engineer makes a couple $100,000 a year, has a couple $100,000 in their bank account, but they're petrified to pull the trigger. So I don't look at that person any different than I look at the person that's so overly aggressive without a plan. It's kind of just the pendulum swings around. And so for me, it's like, yes, if you're a ready, fire, aim person, go, but then realize you need someone to help you manage that. And if you're someone who, which means, hey, Nathan, this is not a good idea. Let's think through it. Like, no, it's a great idea. No, hold on. You didn't see the other 22 steps that we have to do before we get here. Yeah. And then if you're on the other side of that, then it's like, guess what, Nathan, I'm going to have to push you a little bit because you need to get your butt off the sideline and move on it. So I think it's a little different for every person. And I think it's okay to recognize whichever camp you sit in and to use that as a strength, but also recognize it as a weakness, and then seek to have counsel, whether it's, if you don't have a team, an attorney, a real estate agent, a good friend, people who are doing that, who can talk you through and say, hey man, you don't even have a plan. Don't go buy 20 houses before you understand how you do one.
Yeah. It's interesting too. Like people will see a guy like you, by the way, he's been on Bigger Pockets 5 times. Nathan's been on Bigger Pockets. I know he won't say it, but I'm going to say it. I'll brag for you. That's pretty cool. So anyway, they would see a guy like you and be like, wait, he has people that tell him, no, don't do this. It'll kind of surprise a lot of people, I think, because when you're new in the entrepreneurial world and the business world, you think I'm going to be the guy, right? No one can do it as good as I can. But when you see somebody at your level that still has guys saying, hey dude, there's no way you should do that. That's a terrible idea. You're like, sure? You sure? You're like, oh yeah, it's a bad idea. Don't go that way. And you're like, okay, there's a reason you're here. I think it'll surprise, a lot of people.
Well, and I think the other component, so I just hired an executive assistant 6-7 months ago. Best thing I ever did, by the way. Anybody listening, if you're pondering that, just go do it. Pull the trigger, do it. And so we were looking at my calendar because she manages my whole calendar, even today, right? So I was running late. I didn't call you. She messaged you, right?
That's
and said,
right,
hey, I'm running late. So the other day I was talking to her and I was like, I'm feeling a little stressed about this week. We're trying to jam this trip in for my Texas partner or whatever. And I'm like, what do you think? And she's like, well, I was going to tell you, Nathan, I think it's too much, but I didn't want to overstep. And I'm like, hold up. This is your job to tell me. Like, if you see something that I don't see, I need you to tell me.
That's awesome.
And that's one of those things from a leadership perspective. I did the same thing with my COO or my business partner, where it's like, and I remember at one point, his name's David. He sat me down and he said, Nathan, you can talk me into anything. You can sell better than I can. You can dominate better, more than I can, or whatever his words were. And I don't know how to stop you. So I'm telling you right now, sometimes I need you to just shut up and listen. And for a period of time, I was almost afraid to then pull the trigger more. But we get to lean into the fact that, like, the more we know ourselves and the more we understand what our gifts are, and we're not selfish, because we're not self-centered, and we're not serving only ourselves in any business, in anything, in any life. I don't believe. Yeah. And that made a huge difference for me to be able to be like, no, PJ, I need you to tell me that.
Yeah, that's huge. I think a lot of people in their position, though, too, are so used to having the boss be the person that knows everything. You can never tell the boss something, because then you're going to get fired, right? So I think a lot of people are still used to that. They still have that mentality. I can't tell my teacher what to do. I can't tell my parents what to do. I can't tell my boss what to do. But it's more beneficial for the boss if there's other eyes out there seeing other things that they can feed that to you.
Yeah. Well, I have a quote on my board. I have a big 4x8 whiteboard on to the side here. And one of them, it's a Lao Tzu quote, and it says, leaders best when people, what does it say? People barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, we did it ourselves. And it literally, like, Jocko, in his book too, it talks about, like, you lead from the front, or, leaders above you and leaders below you, you can still impact people on both sides of that. Yeah. And rather than saying, like, woe is me, or I can't do that, or if you're the boss, you're like, of course you are not the only person that has the ideas, right?
Yeah.
And you're gonna kill any momentum in any excitement of the people that are around you if you do that. So do you want to literally be killing the excitement of all the people around you, or do you want to impact them and lead them in a way that they're excited and they get to then run with your concept?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about the book. The No Quitter's Guide to Investing in Real Estate. Super cool name. What made you? So you're doing 700 flips. You're building 100 homes. You're building developments. What made you want to stop, pull back, and write a book?
Well, it's interesting because the end of this book, and I'll just put it up here because it's so fun to hold it in my hand.
Yeah.
So, I remember distinctly kind of along the same timeline as that Denver, Colorado conversation was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, if you're not really enjoying what you're doing, like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And so I went back and I thought through, like, what are all the books, the influential books that I've read and helped me learn real estate? Because I didn't hire a coach. I didn't hire mentors. I didn't have a group. All these things came later in my life and in my business evolution. And so I wanted to write a book that actually, not only did you get what I believed was real estate done right, real estate done wrong, but what is it that we're doing? It's like, how are we creating our vision for our life, living that extraordinary life? And how are we also then, the realization that I believe if we're not doing something to impact other people, we're missing out. And in that Go Giver Spirit, Bob Berg's book, like giving back. And so I wanted to put all those books together. And Brandon Turner, who's a good friend of mine and also wrote the foreword to this book from Bigger Pockets, or used to be on Bigger Pockets anyway.
Yeah, he's gone now.
He wrote the foreword, and he even said in the foreword was like, hey, you could read a bunch of other real estate books, or you could just read this one. And that meant so much to me because I wanted somebody, when they were first thinking about it, to say like, okay, if I don't, like, what do I do? Here's a place to start. Here's some stories that I actually went through throughout the book that actually mean something. And then my hope is that it helps someone else create not just a business, they're churning out deals and stuck in, like, even if it's your own business, but if you're not liking what you're doing, it doesn't matter. So maybe we can save some people from doing that.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy too? When you hit a certain level, you start thinking, man, I want to tell other people about this. I mean, you keep your circle small. We talked about that earlier. There's not really, it's not like you're in front of a crowd of 10,000 people all the time telling them, here's what you got to do to buy 700 or flip 700 homes or develop or do this or that. And you want to tell people, you're like, dude, back when I was in those bars, playing music, if someone had told me this information, where would I be now? Like if I had started way early, right? Where would I be right now? So it's all this information is in your brain and you're like, God, I got to get it out there. So it's really cool that you were able to put that into a book form to get that out to everybody. How long did it take you to do this?
Well, so funny enough, I hired a coach, like anything I do now.
Right.
First step was hire a coach, and she was amazing, by the way. And so I think it was about 2 months I spent, and we did pre-work. So it was like all this preliminary stuff on, what do you want to write about, and who's your target avatar, like who are you writing this book for, who's that audience, what are the other books in the market, like how many pages, how many words, what do they look like, what are the size of the book, who do they market to, and all these things. So we really spent some time, like not just on the vision, but then like who's that book being written to. And then so crazy enough, I actually wrote the entire book, 72,000 words in 19 days.
Wow.
So yep. And most of that I was actually traveling too. So I was in Montana for at least a third of that time.
I guess hunting.
In the mountains with the family. So there wasn't any hunting in that moment,
okay.
but so it's literally like in a camper in the middle of right near Yellowstone. It's a cool spot. But so the crazy part is I completed the manuscript. I sent it to my coach, and she was, reviewing it as I'm writing it, but I'm just like hauling through this book. She said it's the fastest, any of her students had ever written this book, or any book. And I reread it and I hated it.
Oh, no.
I hated it. And so about a month later, I come back to her and I'm like, okay, what do we do? I hate it. She's like, well, you could either start editing the book, which I hate details. That sounded insanely daunting to me. She's like, well, why don't you start and rewrite chapter 1? Let's just see like how it goes. So I rewrite chapter 1, rewrite chapter 2, rewrite chapter 3, and I end up rewriting the entire book, not pulling a single word, not a single sentence. And I rewrote the book 66,000 words a second time.
Good God.
Yeah.
Okay. And then at that point it was ready to go. And then you say rewriting, are you deleting everything and just starting over?
Blank page.
No kidding.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
It starts with no quitter. So yeah, I rewrote it and then I submitted it. At that point, it was between self-publishing and I felt like it was good enough. I didn't want it to be one of those, lead funnel crappy books that we both know people who have written. And no offense to them. I'm sure they make lots of money selling whatever they're selling, but that's not what I was doing. I was writing the best book I could possibly write. And so I did get a publisher, Morgan James. And so it published here January 10th. And, and it's pretty cool to be able to say, like, where do you get your book? Well, anywhere books are sold, buddy, like Barnes and Noble.
That's crazy.
Amazon. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine yourself in a church, right? Conducting a musical. And if you had talked to yourself and told them you were going to write a book, about real estate, teaching the whole world about real estate, how impressed and how happy would that person have been to know that's kind of where he was going to go.
Well, I think that's the cool part when we kind of just take our journey, allow ourselves to go on that journey. And, they probably would have looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean you're going to write a book, but I think that's cool. And the important part is anybody listening who's like, well, I'm working my 9-to-5 job and, I hate my life or I hate my job or I hate my boss or I wish I, could do whatever. Well, guess what? You can.
Yeah.
Like, stop telling yourself some BS story that you can't. Instead, put clear steps in place towards that vision that's impactful enough to you that you will actually get your butt out of bed and go fix it. And that to me is what makes it so important. When we can have vision that's clear enough, exciting enough, anybody will do anything if it's that important.
Yeah. How important, because you said you got a coach to write. How important are coaches? I know a lot of people think, well, I don't need to pay for a coach. Let's say it costs $1,000 just for simplicity. And I can use that $1,000 to put towards my business. Right. But a coach, in my opinion, is like a cheat code for life, right? It's going to give you that cheat code to get you to like level 10 where you wouldn't have got there for 10 years. So how important to you are coaches in all aspects of life? I
mean, I can't even overstate how important they are. And I spend a lot more than that on my book coach. I started playing golf 2 years ago. The first thing I did was have clubs made and hire a coach. I went skiing for the first time in 20 years, 2 weeks ago. First thing I did, hire his coach to go ski with us for a day. It's so obvious how impactful the right coach with the right thing in the right timing is. And not everybody can go spend, $1,000 on a day for a ski coach or, spend five figures on a book coach or whatever. That doesn't matter. But a coach is incredibly important. And even to this day, like, I go and coach businesses, but I also still have coaches for me in all the things I do. And not only is it a cheat code, but it's also like a gut check when you can literally say, like, PJ, I got this idea. Tell me, man. I was literally on a call with a buddy today, solving a problem for my meetup. He runs a group that's 4 times bigger than mine. And guess what? Who cares if I've done that many houses or whatever? It doesn't matter because I'm solving that problem and I'm going to go to the person that I know that can help. So it's critically important. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I didn't know that until later in life, right? Yeah. I always thought, you know what, coach, I'll figure this out on my own. I know what I'm talking about. And I knew almost nothing. of the topic. I want to completely switch gears here. You train jujitsu, and you only told me that today. I didn't know that prior to this. So real quick, I know we're on a time crunch. How impactful is jujitsu on your day-to-day life? You're being a dad, being a business professional, running a meetup group, writing a book. Where does jujitsu play in all that?
Okay, well, I got a crazy story for you.
Let's do
it. I've been a Joe Rogan fan and for a long time. And between Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss on their podcast, they had all these guys starting to be on who were talking jiu-jitsu, and then Jocko, came out, Joe Rogan, all of those guys, right? Even Lex Friedman, he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So all these top podcast guys are all like monsters in the gym too. So I started to be obsessed, but I was also bullied as a kid and terrified. And I hated the thought, like, I love people. To this day, I love people. I don't like aggressive interactions. But I just had this like conviction almost, like, you have to go do this. So I walk into a jiu-jitsu gym. I meet my coach, who's now been a good friend for many years now, Trey. And I look at him, he looks like the statue of God. I'm like, bro, like, what do you do? Like, and of course I'm just like some random dude in the gym. Well, I start training with him, and this is like age, I don't know, 37. So it's not like, I'm not like, been training. I wasn't a wrestler. I was a freaking choir boy in high school, so it's not like I had the training. And so I start training, and then end up in the not just jiu-jitsu gym, but the MMA gym. And so at age 39, I actually took a cage fight in front of like 1,000 people, couple thousand people.
Holy cow.
And so I did an actual cage fight. And
good for you, man.
So,
that takes some guts, man. That is not easy to do.
No, in front of, I sold 100 tickets. Half of them bought like front row tickets to my fight, and all my buddies. And of course I run a huge meetup. So I have all these, real estate people there, and ultimately lost the decision too. And I hate losing. But
yeah,
jiu-jitsu has been it's just been an unbelievable, both mental, physical, emotional turning point for me in my life, to have something that no matter how big you are, like I'm 6'2", 6'3", weigh 210, I'm a big guy, like roll with a D1 wrestler who's in the UFC that weighs 135 pounds. He's going to whoop your butt. That's what's going to happen. And, but you don't know until you have that experience. And so it's been a life changer for me.
Yeah. Congratulations on the fight too, man. Fighting in front of getting in a fist fight anywhere is terrifying. I don't care who you are. I remember seeing an interview with Donald Cerrone, who was a UFC fighter, and that guy was saying he was terrified before fights. Like, and that dude, he's a tough guy. He's
tough.
One of the toughest guys in the world that he's ever in the world, and he was terrified. So walking into continuously, like saying, "Okay, I'm going to train for a fight. I'm going to do it." You train. You're a little nervous, but you're not in front of a crowd yet. No big deal. As it gets closer and closer and closer, it gets more and more nerve-wracking. Yeah. Then you get there at the event and you're like, wow, all my friends really did show up. They really did buy tickets. And you got to get in there and then get in a fist fight in front of all your friends and family, and hope all the skills you've been training for worked out. But that's good job, man. Congratulations. That is not easy. And win, lose, or draw, I don't think anybody would ever think, oh yeah, you didn't win. Oh no. It's just the fact that you went in there and everybody else watched you go in there.
Yeah, it was a unique experience. I'll tell you that. And I actually ended up cutting weight with the guy who I was getting in a fist fight with the next day. We didn't know it, but we ended up showing at the same place at the same time to cut weight. And we sat in the same sauna, cutting weight, Ryan Nash. So yeah. Yep.
It's crazy too. Even though you get in a fight with the guy, it's not like there's no animosity. There's no anger towards each other, right?
No. And we still stay in touch to this day. Like, which is, I mean, there's nothing like that bond, really what it is. Yeah. So it's a very unique experience. And so now at 41, I still have this grandeur of like, man, if I would have found this as a younger man,
oh man.
But as we talked earlier, pre-show, but yeah, it's been a life-changing thing to the positive for me.
Yeah. But the fact that you got in the ring and did it, like there's never going to be a point where you're like, man, I wish I would have at least tried. Right.
True.
You
Yep.
already got that. That's such a cool thing to be able to like, it's in you now, right? It's
Yeah.
part of you now. Whereas had you not done it and been like, you know what, maybe I'll do it next year. And it next year becomes never, you'd always be thinking about that. And every year that passes is a less likelihood that you're going to be able to do it.
Yes.
So
And
you did it when you had the chance.
exactly. And I created these fight shirts, and because of course everything I do, I have to have like the right logo and branding and all these things, because I'm a obsessed nerd. But
Yeah.
On the shirt, on the back of it was one of my favorite quotes, which is the Roosevelt "Man in the Arena" quote.
Oh yeah.
Which I'll paraphrase for the moment for people who don't know, which is basically like, to the man in the arena whose face is mud with blood, sweat, and tears, who even aired valiantly, even in loss, isn't with those cold and timid souls who never had that experience, right?
Yep.
And it's just such a powerful image and a powerful quote, and so yeah, I didn't want to be a cold, timid soul. I wanted to leave it all out on the field.
Hell yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, from a nerdy choir boy to a hunting, fighting, business dominator. You did they made a lot of big changes.
Yeah, well, now I really look at it honestly like a renaissance man. Like, what really, good with words, good with people. Like, I literally have right here, Stoicism. I have this book. It's so great, On the Shortness of Life. Seneca sits on my desk. It's like, how can I be better in every aspect of my life, and in more control of my own emotions, more in control of myself as a person, as a father, as a man, husband, all these things. Like, how can I be the most, the most incredible being in this short freaking life that we get? And so that's my mission.
That's awesome. Strive for excellence in every aspect of your life.
Yeah,
That's
literally.
so cool. And the world needs more guys like you that are with that mentality, that are thinking along those lines, that aren't thinking, what can I get next? Right? They're thinking, how can I be excellent? How can I be the best dad out there today?
Yeah.
How can I be the best dad today? Like, that's like such an interesting thing, because when you think about it, you actually apply it, versus just saying, I'm sure I'm good. You know what I mean?
Well,
when you're constantly thinking about that, though, you're actually applying it as much as possible.
Well, I'll give you an example to the conversation we had earlier, which was like asking your team, or asking your CEO, COO, or your, administrative person, like, how did I do? Ask your kids, at bedtime. Yeah. Sometimes I do that too. Like, hey, or, you screw up and you got a little upset. Like, hey son, I'm sorry. I love you so much. I got a little frustrated today. Like, all these things come back around.
Oh, yeah.
They all come back around.
Definitely.
And when we're not so stuck on how great we are, and like how unfallible we are, which by the way, we're not, then we get to live a lot more beautiful, healthy life too.
Absolutely. All right, Nathan, thank you so much for coming on here. Is there anything we're missing?
I mean, we can talk about all sorts of stuff, but maybe we'll just have to do a part 2 sometime, and we can,
I hope so,
Joe Rogan style it, and hit all the topics. But, honestly, I really enjoyed the conversation, and most importantly, just, I'm excited to any person listening that's, thinking about where they are, and that they have this overwhelming sense of like, gosh, I can do something. That fires me up. And so, anybody listening, like, whomever that is doing what you want to do, there's a roadmap already out there for you to do something. And you just have to, here's the problem. It's your problem. So you have to make the choice. You have to take action, and you have to go do the work.
Would solve so many problems if you just took accountability. Just my problem, I got to fix it, and then go about that way. All right, Nathan, how can people get hold of you? Because I guarantee people are going to want to talk to you. They're going to want the book. They're going to find out what the meetup. How do we get hold of you?
Yep, absolutely. So, No Quitter's Guide, you can buy it anywhere books are sold. I'm on a mission to get Amazon reviews right now. So any purchase Amazon review on there is incredibly helpful. And so that'd be great. Just Google No Quitter's Guide or Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million. Like you can find it literally anywhere books are sold. Target, it's crazy. And then as far as like social, they're all the same. Nathan Brooks, REI. So you can check that down. And then the meetups, Bridge Real Estate Investing Meetup, you can hit that on Facebook. And man, I think I covered all the bases.
Awesome. Here's the big question at the end of the podcast that I ask everybody.
Yeah.
This is the one question we finish off with.
Yep.
We are Landlife. I buy and sell land. Dirt
Yep.
and tree. Nothing exciting, right? If you, Nathan, could buy land anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Well, I read this as a question. I love it. And I normally don't like doing pre-work because I like to be like in the vibe with you. So, but I appreciate the question. So it was a no question. I knew exactly what the answer was. So it would be likely, it would either be outside of like Park City, Utah, or outside of Bozeman, Montana. And it would be, hundreds of acres with a beautiful, mountains, animals, elk, mule deer. Of course, for the hunting, there'd be water for fishing, and no one around, and a beautiful home on that piece of ground at some point. So yeah, no question, that would be mine.
That's awesome. It's crazy how many people say Montana, especially business guys. It's always Montana, Idaho, maybe Colorado in the mountains, somewhere far away.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's awesome. I'll look for Montana. We'll get started on it.
Dude, but, let's go. And by the way, I, in my Airbnb business, with a particular partner this year, we said house number 10, with this partner is a mountain house. So I'll put that out there. Anybody awesome. Finds us the mountain house, we'll make it worth your while. Believe me. So
if you're listening, go get it.
Let's go get it.
All right, Nathan, thank you so much, man.
Likewise. Thank you.
I appreciate it. All right, guys, till next time, I'll see you on Landlife.